I think my biggest message would be is no one knows your body better than you do. Something is not right. I don't feel well. I deserve better. I'm not going to let this rest. Because had I just said, okay, I'm going to sit around and wait till December for the allergist, then they did their testing and they would say, no, it could have gone to my brain. It could have gone to other organs. I could be in a much worse situation. I have this disease for some reason. I don't know why, but I think maybe I'm the vessel to providing hope, to providing a positive role model. My work is not done here, and I'm going to go down fighting as hard as possible. So I don't know. I just say, listen to your body, do what you know is right, and stick your ground no matter what.
Cancer is just something that we all have to recognize, acknowledge, cope with, live with, struggle with, rage upon, crush, and even thrive with. This show is more than knowing and fighting or beating cancer. It's more than just relaying science, hope, and technology. Together, our purpose is to demystify cancer, take away as much fear out of the diagnosis, treatment, and process as we can, defeat its grip on our lives. This is The Cancering Show. Welcome to another inspiring episode of The Cancering Show. Today, we're so honored to have Leah Phillips, a lung cancer survivor who actually never smoked. She's going to talk about how she was diagnosed with stage 4 non-small cell lung cancer after seeing multiple doctors. Leah's journey is nothing short of remarkable. We're going to talk about how she took charge of her health, how she advocated for herself, and ultimately received the treatment that changed everything. I know you're going to be so inspired. I can't wait to get started. Leah, welcome to the show.
I'm thankful to be here today.
Excellent. We so appreciate you joining us on Zoom since you're joining us all the way from Kentucky.
Yes, I am in Louisville, actually.
Awesome. Well, can you introduce yourself to our listeners? Tell us a little bit about you.
Sure. My name is Leah, and I live in Louisville, Kentucky. I'm currently married to my husband, Todd, for 21 years, and we have 3 kids. Tristan, who is 19 and is starting his freshman year at Western Kentucky University. Anna Grace, who's 17 and starting her senior year in high school, and Stockton, who is 14 and starting 8th grade. I am a former high school teacher turned stay-at-home mom when I had my oldest. And currently I like to spend my time with my family and friends. I like to bake sourdough bread and read. And so I actually taught home ec before I decided to stay home. So I'm using my college degree at home.
That is amazing.
Thanks. Yeah, it's kind of not many people do this anymore.
Yeah.
So that's kind of me. And in December of 2019, I was diagnosed as a never smoker with non-small cell lung cancer. I was 43 years old with 3 small children, or young children, I guess I should say. And that's kind of who I am.
I can't imagine how scary that was. Take us kind of back to that time.
So ironically enough, that fall, when my symptoms began, was the first time that my husband and I and the kids kind of felt like we were back into the normal swing of things. Unluckily, my husband was diagnosed at the age of 42 in 2018, that was February, with prostate cancer, which was a cancer that had been taking the lives of men in his family for decades, his grandfather, his own father, and many uncles. And so when he was positive for prostate cancer, it took about 18 months for us to get through prostate removal and then 2 additional surgeries to ensure that he was cancer-free, which he has been cancer-free since we completed the surgeries, which is wonderful.
Amazing.
And yes, it's totally amazing. But then ironically enough, in fall of 2019, I started having some odd symptoms. But really that fall, we were just then taking a big sigh of relief, thinking, oh, he's cancer-free, life can get back to normal. At the time, the kids were, I think, 14, 13, and 9. So I was busy running people everywhere and doing all the things. Todd was working as a CEO of a local company. And not only was I at home with my own kids, but I also watched my sister's kids, who at the time were 6, 3, and 6 months old, 2 days a week for her.
Yeah, that's a lot going on.
Yes. And life was good. I was running or going to F45, if you all have those there. It's like one of our exercise places we have here. 7 days a week, one or the other. I had never smoked. I was healthy and whatnot. And like I said, we were just kind of chugging along. And in September, I started with a cough. And I was like, this is kind of weird. I just started with a cough, no cold before. Or at least I didn't think I'd had a cold, but your mind starts playing tricks on you.
Yes.
So I went to my primary care physician and I said, I've been had this cough for like, I don't know, almost 2 weeks, and it's not going away and it's really bugging me. And she said, well, she's like, let's go ahead and just do your physical. You're scheduled for next week. We'll do blood work, whatever else. And everything came back normal. And she said, I really think this is post-viral cough. We're seeing a lot of this right now where people have a little virus and the cough just hangs on. She said, so I'll do you a favor and I'll give you some steroids that should take care of it within weeks.
Yeah.
So at that point, I was like, okay, that's easy enough. So then we proceeded on with fall, and I guess it was in late September, I was back to my primary care physician, but unfortunately my actual doctor that I saw regularly was on a leave because her son had just had a baby. So she took 3 months leave because he was out of state. And I saw a younger doctor who was right out of school. And I went back complaining of this cough that would not go away and just not feeling great. And he said, I really think this is exercise-induced asthma or allergies. So he referred me to an allergist. And of course, I couldn't get an appointment with him until December of 2019. Yes. So I, went back and I kept thinking, gosh, what's going on? We had our air filters changed at home. We had just built a new house at the beginning of I guess we moved in the beginning of 2018. Late 2017. So I knew we had we shouldn't have mold or anything like that.
Right.
So we did what we could on our end. And then I guess it was middle of October, I went back to the PCP's office and saw the same young doctor again. And this time I was complaining of not only the coughing, but I was starting to have shortness of breath with exercise and with walking up the stairs, especially if I was carrying like my niece or laundry. And he was adamant that he felt this was asthma or allergies. And he said, I just want you to take Zyrtec and Flonase as directed until you can get in with the allergist. So that's what I did. In late October, I went back to the doctor, same primary care physician. And I know people are like, why did you keep going back there?
I can imagine myself in the same scenario. Even as a physician, you just say, what you've got to do is follow the advice of a good doctor. Yeah.
Right. And this is a reputable office. And here in Louisville, we don't have a lot of doctors, primary care physicians taking new patients because so many have gone to concierge medicine. So I went back and I saw the same doctor and I said to him, there is something seriously wrong with me. I feel like I have a really big heaviness in my chest. I've had pneumonia as a teenager and I think maybe I have pneumonia again. And he goes, there's no way. I've listened to your lungs again. They're too clear. And I said, please, please, please just do a chest x-ray. And he said,
right,
that's a waste of money. And I said, I don't care at this point. I'll even pay for it. Just, can you please order the x-ray and let's just rule that out. So he very rudely said, that's fine. I'll do the chest x-ray, but I'm going to call you in 45 minutes and tell you it was negative and tell you to wait till December to see the allergist. I said, that's fine. I hope that's what you do. In fact, do.
Right.
45 minutes later, he calls me and said, well, I can't believe I'm eating my words, but he goes, Mrs. Phillips, you were correct. He's like, you have right lung consolidation indicative of pneumonia. So he put me on a Z-Pack and said, give it, 10 days and I should feel better.
Yeah.
So I did that. I didn't even make it all the way through my Z-Pack and I started coughing up blood. So I called, that happened on a Saturday. So I called the after hours, which they, connected me with him and he said, well, come to the office on Monday morning. So I did. So on that Monday morning, I said, something is not right. I shouldn't be coughing up blood. He said, well, that can happen with pneumonia sometimes, especially if it's been a long case. And pneumonia can take months to resolve and whatnot. So he put me on a stronger, more broad spectrum antibiotic to clear up this pneumonia. I asked if he would repeat the chest x-ray and he said it was too soon. So a few weeks, I don't know, it was maybe not even a week, few weeks, it was probably 10 days later, I ended up back at primary care's physician office. But this time I said, I do not want to see him. Put me with anyone else. I don't care.
Yeah.
I just need somebody new looking at this. And I saw the nurse practitioner and she was like, this just doesn't make sense. You're too healthy, and now I was having fatigue and I had lost some weight and I was just exhausted. I wasn't sleeping because I was coughing and worrying. And so she ordered a repeat chest x-ray. It showed right lung consolidation. And she said, we're going to get to the bottom of this. I want you to go have an outpatient x-ray. Chest CT. And I said, okay.
Yeah.
So I went to the hospital and had that done. And she had told me, don't leave the hospital until I call you and tell you it's okay to leave. I said, okay. So I'm sitting there, and next thing I know, my phone rings and it's her. And she says, you know what? You still have this right lung consolidation, and it looks worse in the chest CT than it did in the chest X-ray. She's like, so we're going to go ahead and have you admitted for antibiotic resistant pneumonia and see what we can do for you. I said, okay. So I was admitted to the hospital, and that was mid-November, like right before Thanksgiving. And I was there for 4 days, and I was on 24-hour round the clock IV antibiotics and steroids. And while I was there, I started feeling better because, of course, steroids make you feel better. And I was
always
hungry because they make you hungry and they give you energy and all the things. So on the last day that I was there, I was at the hospital by myself. A pulmonologist came in and he said, you know, I'm just going to do a bronchoscopy just to check on things in there. And I was like, okay, well, can you explain what that is? Because I'm not a medical professional. And he said, yes. He's like, we're going to use a scope. We're going to go down your throat into your lungs. I'll take a peek. He goes, if I see anything unusual, like if I see a mass or a nodule, I'll take a sample so we can biopsy it. And I'm like, whoa, put the brakes on. I thought I was here for pneumonia. And he said, well, you are, but you just never know, especially in Kentucky. I said, okay. And he said, and I'll do a saline wash of your lungs and we can culture that. So I called my husband. I was like, well, you might want to come down here because I'm having this procedure. Well, he did not do the procedure correctly. He didn't even sedate me. He did it while I was awake with blinders on where I could hear it and really kind of almost see everything that was on the screen. So it was horrible. And after the procedure was over, he said, you know what? He's like, everything looks great. It's just residual pneumonia. I did a saline swish, and we'll let you know what the results are. So that was, like I said, right before Thanksgiving. And I don't know, 2 weeks later, he called back. I was still feeling worse. And he called back and he said, well, or I called them and I said, can I come in any sooner? Because I was supposed to follow up with him. And he said, no. He's like, everything is fine. He's like, you know, we told you we didn't see anything. And the cultures came back negative. And I was like, well, if they're negative, then how do I still have pneumonia? He's like, well, it just takes a while for it to resolve and whatnot. So then on December 13th, I went to called the primary care's office first, and they said they had no appointments for 2 weeks. And I said, okay. I said, but I was just in the hospital, and you told me when I was, you know, discharged to follow up with the doctor in a week. I said, and I couldn't get an appointment. So now it's December 13th. I'm still waiting for that appointment and I'm feeling worse. And so they were like, well, we're sorry. So I decided to go into the primary care's office anyways. And when I got there, I looked awful. I hadn't slept. I had lost so much weight. I was just absolutely miserable. I was having shortness of breath just walking from the couch to the kitchen. And they kept saying, no, they didn't have any appointments. And eventually the girls behind the desk sent the nurse practitioner. And I really think she was kind of coming out to make sure I mentally was okay. And I said to her, please do something to help me. You've got to help me. And I was crying. I was like, I've got little kids, but something is going on. So she ordered another chest CT. And this time she said, it's outpatient. Don't wait for me to call. Just go home. So on December 13th, it was a Friday, I went in and had my chest CT done. And the doctor actually called me at 6 o'clock that night, which I thought was a bad sign anyways. And she kept saying, do you have any back pain? And I was like, no, I'm just, it's the stuff I've been telling you. And she said, well, we see some things on your CT that are a little concerning. So we would like you to go to the ER to be admitted. So that night I was admitted. When I went to the ER, I sat in the ER for 2 hours waiting to be admitted, although I was a direct admit. And my mom was with me. My husband was in the process of selling the company that he worked for. And we finally got to a room with the ER doctor. And the ER doctor says to me, and this time my husband and my mom were in the room. And he said, well, have you seen the results of your CT scan? And this was before the old directly into your my chart.
Yes.
Go. And I said, well, no. And he said, well, he turned the computer screen to face me and he said, can you read this line right here? This is what we're concerned about. And the line said, lytic lesions present on T4 and 5, highly concerning for metastatic cancer.
None of which anybody would expect you to understand.
No.
I can't imagine the level of frustration.
Oh, I was so frustrated and I didn't feel good. And my mom was a nurse at the time. Now she is retired. And I know she knew exactly what they were talking about.
Right.
So they admitted me upstairs and a pulmonologist, not the same one, but a different one from the same group. They called him in to do a thoracentesis because they could tell I had fluid on my right lung. And he came in and he refused to do it because he said I was too thin and or too small. I am a thin person, but I'm 5'7". So there's no way. So the hospitalists were like, you know what? We haven't done this since medical school, but we can give it a good college try and see what happens. Worst that could happen is that we're going to puncture your lung and you'll need a chest tube, but we'll get that fluid out of there. We'll get you feeling better and we'll hopefully get to the bottom of this. And everyone was convinced that it was breast or cervical cancer. That's just kind of, or ovarian. That's
for your age. Yeah.
For my age, right. And, my health history or whatnot. So they did try to do the thoracentesis, and I did end up with a chest tube, and they drained a liter of fluid off my right lung. And about 24 hours later, it came back positive that there was cancer for malignancy, but it didn't show where it was coming from. They couldn't get that information. So the doctor at that time, an oncologist, came in and he said, well, we'll do a bone biopsy because there's several spots on your spine and those are easier to reach than having to go in to do a bronchoscopy. So they did a bone biopsy and it came back that it was stage 4 non-small cell lung cancer. And you could have knocked the three of us, meaning my mom and my husband, over with a feather. And I just remember saying, I don't understand. I've never smoked, like literally never put a cigarette to my lips. And I was like, I didn't grow up around secondhand smoke. I couldn't get past the smoking because especially in Kentucky, it's a big tobacco state. That's what all the ads were about, is lung cancer and smoking. So that oncologist, when he came in to tell me that I had lung cancer, told me that I had 6 to 12 months to live and to get my affairs in order and enjoy the time I had left with my family.
Wow.
My husband said, that's unacceptable. She's healthy, which is kind of ironic, and 43, and you need to leave this room and don't come back and send somebody else in. So a second oncologist came in and he said, well, I wouldn't say 6 to 12 months. He said, I think we need to do biomarker testing to figure out if you have a genetically driven cancer. And especially since you are a never smoker, you don't have a history of cancer in your family. He said, there's a good chance that you do. So they had to do a bronchoscopy again to get the proper sampling. And it came back that I was, or am, EGFR exon 19 deletion is my driver for my lung cancer.
I'm going to stop you there for just a second, just to put into context for our listeners. So we talk a lot about genetic profiling and, having those genetic markers, and that sometimes, it sounds scary to have a certain mutation, but I suspect what you're about to tell us is that was really good news for you.
Yes, that was actually like the best news we could hear. We had done a lot of research, like in the hospital. My husband especially was on the phone with people and on the computer. And he said, everybody kept saying, if we can find out that you have a biomarker, then there's a real possibility that this is treatable. And of course, I didn't get the results back of that biomarker testing until December 30th. So it was, almost 2 weeks later. And the nurse even said, you just won the lung cancer lottery. And I'm like, wow, okay. So that same day we went into the oncologist and I started on Tagrisso, which is a targeted therapy, or TKI, for my genetic mutation. A lot of people ask me if it's a hereditary type of mutation. And as of now, no. They consider it a somatic mutation, meaning that I was born with a healthy EGFR exon 19 gene. And somewhere along the way, it was broken and it allowed the cancer to grow.
It's a good way to say that.
And at that point, that was December 30th that all that kind of happened. And then by January 2nd, we had already made the appointment, and we're going to on January 2nd to see a Dr. Leora Horn at Vanderbilt University, which is 3 hours away from us, who is wonderful. And she was kind of like the EGFR guru, at least close to us. And since she's left to go work for AstraZeneca, who is working on the second drug that I will take when I progress. So we're glad she's there. But she said at the local hospital, they told me 2 years. After my EGFR diagnosis, they said, we think you have about 2 years. And so when we went to see her, she was much more positive. She connected me with someone else who was young and had EGFR lung cancer. And she said, I don't like to put a timeline for anity out there. She said, but statistically, if you really want one, and I got up and left the room because I did not want one.
But your family might, Yeah,
it took a lot of years for me to have the guts to ask my husband, what did she say? And she said 2 years.
Wow.
So I responded very well to the Tagrisso, and a year into my diagnosis, I had all of my bone mets. I ended up having 13 bone mets in total to my spine and pelvis. They were all sclerotic or healing, so that was good. And my
That's huge.
primary mass that was in my right middle lobe had shrunk by 70%. And it was the size of a walnut when we started.
Wow.
So at that point, my husband and I, learning to be advocates for ourselves, and said, what else can we do? I was feeling good. I was back to exercising. No one would know I had lung cancer if they saw me.
Yeah.
And we said, we'll do anything. You tell me to stand on my head for 24 hours a day. That's what we'll do. You know, the kids are still young. And she said, well, she's like, we can consider radiation if you want to speak to a radiologist, a radiation oncologist. She said, but it's not common standard practice right now. And we said, let's.
Right.
So we met with the radiation oncologist, and he was very, very positive about how effective radiation can be in lung cancer. He's close to our age. He said, if you were my wife, if this was my wife sitting on the table, I 100% would do radiation to this primary spot and try to control the cancer from spreading anywhere.
Yeah.
So about a year into my diagnosis, I did have 8 sessions of really high-powered SBRT radiation to that primary tumor in my lung. And since then, I've remained stable, no progression.
Amazing. Yeah.
And I have been on my targeted therapy for a little over 4.5 years, which at diagnosis, they told me the average patient can take it for 2 to 3 years without progression. So that's a win.
That's huge.
That's very huge. And then after my radiation, they said, instead of 2 years, we'll now say 5 years from diagnosis. That's kind of your timeline. And I was like, okay, that's only 3 years left, or 4 years left, but we'll take it. And now here I am, and 5 years will be in December.
That's amazing. There's a couple of threads that, we talk about all the time. One, this multimodal therapy, right? That especially, we like IV chemotherapies or targeted therapies because they go everywhere in the body at the same time. But once you've kind of got the horse back in the barn, so to speak, I can use a Kentucky reference.
Yes.
That then, using radiation, or even I was wondering if they were going to send you to a surgeon, some type of multimodal therapy can really help to contain it. I do think it's really interesting that you are still on your targeted therapy, because a lot of times they tell us that after a certain amount of time, you need to come off because of toxicity or concerns that there could be another downstream problem. Did they talk with you about that? Are there any? I don't know the drug very well.
So that is a good question. So the drug was only FDA approved about 1.5 years before I started taking it. And of course, there was a trial. But we are kind of the guinea pigs, those of us that are still on it since 2019, because this is an unexpected situation to be in. They really thought that 2 to 3 years and I would progress, all of us would progress, and then we'd have to either go on IV infusion chemo or, well, in my case with lung cancer, they will re-biopsy if and when I progress to make sure that I don't have another genetic mutation, which our mutations can kind of morph into another mutation. Hopefully that does not happen. So now the big question is this toxicity with the TKI. And I'm part of a study through Dana-Farber about kind of this situation. Like, what is this doing side effect wise? What is this doing to our bodies? It's very interesting because it looks to be, with all of our research, that people can either take it, like get 6 months to 18 months kind of response, and then it's gone, or kind of people get to that 4 to 5 year mark, and sometimes they can make it 8 years. So it's really unknown. My side effects from the TKI were the worst, I will say the worst, when I was first diagnosed and first started taking Tagrisso, and I think they kind of leveled out as my body got used to it.
Yeah, I think that provides some hope for some of our patients, because we see that as well in other targeted therapies, that those symptoms can be quite intense, and patients are like, I don't want to take this. And, there's some dose adjustment. We always start at the maximum dose and then lower to get to the dose that's right for your body's chemistry. So, kind of working with your doctor there and recognizing that, yes, a lot of those symptoms do decrease. A lot of people think they're going to only increase in intensity, and they're like, well, it can't get any worse than this. And really, a lot of the times they do decrease in intensity as you said, kind of you get to the right dose and as your body gets used to it.
So interestingly for us on Tagrisso, there's one dose, which is 80 milligrams. Now, people have really, really bad side effects. They can try having it, to the 40 milligrams, and they kind of play with it a little bit, really just between the 80 and 40.
Got it.
After my whole journey with that primary care physician's office, after I was diagnosed, it was a little like PTSD. I switched to a concierge medicine doctor here in Louisville that does a lot of pharmacogenetics testing. And I had all this testing done. And I mean, it's like a 20-page document. And I'm thankful for this. One of the drugs that they tested with my genetics was Tagrisso. That would have been on anybody she tests, but Tagrisso is one of the drugs on that test. And it came when I got the results in my chart, it said yellow for Tagrisso, which means could be good, could be bad. And I started like freaking out thinking, oh no, this is a horrible sign. But really what my genetics do is I get more bang for your buck with the dosage I'm on. So my body gets a little bit more. So that's another thing that's interesting. Like, is it my genetics
fascinating
that are helping? It is, interestingly enough, like I feel like just in the last, I would say 6 months, where some of my side effects have kind of rejuvenated themselves a little bit. Not nearly as bad. I had a horrible time with mouth sores at first, and now I get them here and there, but nothing like at the beginning. I think the biggest thing is the brain fog and the fatigue, but Tagrisso does cross the blood-brain barrier because lung cancer often can spread to the brain. And so that's kind of expected. I think the most exciting thing that is going on in the lung cancer world right now is that stage 4 lung cancer patients were never considered for surgery. And now we are considered candidates. And I actually helped host and lead a webinar with 2 doctors from MD Anderson. One is a thoracic oncologist and one is a thoracic oncology surgeon. And I'm going to see them in a few weeks because even having had lung radiation, she still feels that I'm a good surgical candidate to get that, the
original mass
out of there, because their trial that they did for this is showing that if they can get that original mass out, even though it's been radiated or it shows complete metabolic response, oftentimes when they send it to pathology, they'll still find a core of cancer that's active. So there's a good chance, when I see her, she'll say, yes, let's do it. And that will be a lobectomy, to my right middle lobe. But I mean, how exciting, and how far
that is exciting.
I mean, and how far lung cancer treatment research has come in just 4.5 years, when the first oncologist was like, get your affairs in order, to now where they're saying, let's do surgery. So there is a lot of hope out there. And I am very thankful that I qualify for a targeted therapy. And I wouldn't wish cancer or the side effects of the targeted therapy on anyone. I don't care if they smoked or didn't smoke, or young, old, what race, religion, identity, whatever. But I will say, I think that these TKIs, the more the doctors, the researchers learn, I think that's the wave of the future. I mean, for cancer treatment, it's just, I take it at home every day. If I'm out and about, if I have to take it while I'm out, nobody really notices anything. It's just really a miracle, quite honestly.
I think there are so many new therapies, very targeted, a lot oral, that are the wave of the future, as you've said. And we know that the more we can target the cancer cell without harming your normal cells, that too is going to result in a longer life, because we're not lowering your immune system or requiring you to kind of take on all these, organ damaging toxicities, and still fight to stay alive. There's so many themes in your story. I think one is really being an advocate for yourself, and also really kind of finding the hope, maybe even when it wasn't immediately obvious. What would you say to our listeners about being your own advocate when you know there's something going on?
I think my biggest message would be is no one knows your body better than you do. And sometimes out in our medical world, some physicians feel like they know more than you if they're older than you, or if they're a different gender than you, or whatnot, or that they're more educated than you. So then they're the expert. And yes, I didn't go to med school. I have a master's degree. I'm not uneducated. I just stuck to saying that this is not right. Something is not right. I don't feel well. I deserve better. I'm not going to let this rest. Because had I just said, okay, I'm going to sit around and wait till December for the allergist, then they did their testing and they would say, no, it could have gone to my brain. It could have gone to other organs. I could be in a much worse situation.
Absolutely.
I think that it's important when you come out of the fog of your initial diagnosis, because it is surreal and life-changing and depressing and hard and sad. And not only, are you worried about yourself and your health, you're also worried about how this is affecting all the people that you live with and your parents and your siblings and, your children, and the list goes on, is to become not at peace, like where you're just saying, okay, I'm going to let what happen happens. But it is like my big thing I always say, it is what it is. I can't change it. So I'm going to make the most of it. And I'm going to live, my big slogan is, I'm going to live my best life one day at a time. And, I do everything in my control to give my body physically what it needs to respond as best as possible. I am still working out 6 days a week at F45. I had to quit the running because of my bone bets, but I am still doing F45 minus the jumping. I see a Reiki therapist once a month. I do therapeutic massage every 8 weeks. I see a functional medicine doctor in cahoots with my oncologist and my PCP now, that I'm on different vitamins and stuff when they really monitor my, vitamins and minerals. I try to do something every day that is positive. I try to be a role model. And one problem with cancer is there's so much sadness and grief and pain that when you are first diagnosed and you tell people, your diagnosis, everybody always jumps to worst case scenario. And they want to tell you of, their Aunt Betty who did this, and all the horror stories. People don't take the time to say, yeah, but you know what? My friend so-and-so, or I heard this. So I've kind of changed my way of thinking, and I have this disease for some reason. I don't know why, but I think maybe I'm the vessel to providing hope, to providing positive role model. And let's face it, like, I've got 3 kids that still need me, and my work is not done here. And I'm going to go down fighting as hard as possible. So I don't know. I just say, listen to your body, do what you know is right, and stick your ground no matter what someone tells you. And if you have to see a different doctor, see a different doctor. I've had 2 local oncologists now. I've seen 2 different oncologists at Vanderbilt. I've seen a doctor at oncologist at Mass General, and now I'm going to MD Anderson, because this is not a broken finger. This is not a hangnail. This is big, but big things can happen. And I also say, if there's an opportunity to be part of research, even if it's through questionnaires, I always feel like I'm doing them in order to help the people that are coming behind me.
I love that you mentioned that. We talk a lot about clinical trials and the benefits, not just to you personally, if this AstraZeneca drug works out or whatever, but also the benefit to those future patients, and to really making your diagnosis count. I think it counts towards that. I know we are running short on time, and I cannot tell you how much I appreciate your candor and sharing your story with us. You have such a light about you that really shines through. I'm sure our listeners will hear it as well. And so we so appreciate your advice. Any last words for, what we call cancering?
I think my last words would be that no matter what your cancer diagnosis is, no matter how old or young you are, we're all in this together. And I know there can be some animosities between cancers, who gets more funds, and, what cancers have more medications. But let's be honest, none of us want to be in this situation. So, I like to say we're in this together. We need to stick together. And quite often, as you well know, that one drug developed for one cancer ends up treating something else. So I guess that's my parting words, is don't lose hope, support one another, and just enjoy every day, because we're all born terminal. Nobody knows. I mean, you're not getting any older when you're born. You're not getting any younger when you're born. You're just getting older. So you're just getting closer to that date. Just some of us are kind of forced to really take that news in and have it right in our front of our face, which is a gift in some ways and is hard in some ways, but just try to enjoy every day and love the people you love, because that's what it's all about.
I love that. Absolutely. I say to patients all the time that we never know how much time any of us have, and nobody's promised a day. You just got to make the most of it.
That's exactly right.
Leah, if our listeners wanted to learn more about your story or to get in touch with you, how should they do that?
Well, first and foremost, I'm one of the founding 3 members of the Young Lung Cancer Initiative, which you can find online. It's ylci.org, and that is just a website and a group. Basically, there's a Facebook patient group, and then there's a website for young lung cancer patients, which are generally, the definition of that is people diagnosed with lung cancer under the age of 50. So that's there. And then if you are on Substack, I keep a blog on Substack, and the title is Unfiltered Life, a Mother's Stage 4 Lung Cancer Journey. And I update that. Well, I was doing really well with like twice a week, but with getting a kid ready for college, it's been a little bit sparse of the last few weeks. But you can read my entire diagnosis. I had kept them on Facebook, and I copy and pasted everything into Substack. So it's a free read on Substack. I know some charge. And also, Young Lung Cancer Initiative is on TikTok. You'll see my face a lot if you follow that, as well as Instagram and Facebook.
Well, I have so enjoyed our conversation, Leah. Thank you so much for sharing your story with our listeners and really kind of bringing that hope and light, as we talked about, as well as all the aspects of advocacy, mentorship, and all the things you're doing, not just for yourself and your family, but for lung cancer patients all over. So thank you for what you do.
Very honored to be asked. So thank you.
Leah's incredible resilience and determination leave me speechless. I so appreciate how she spoke candidly about navigating her diagnosis, participating in clinical trials, and maintaining a positive mindset despite all of these challenges. I hope her resilience and grit leave you as inspired as well. So until next time, keep cancering and take care of yourself. Thanks again for listening. And don't forget to submit your questions at www.cancering.com. We're here for all of those questions, and we'll get you the answers. This show is brought to you by the University of South Alabama Mitchell Cancer Institute. MCI is a cutting-edge cancer research and patient center built to fight cancer smarter in Mobile and Baldwin County, Alabama. Our researchers and clinicians focus daily on the struggle against cancer, serving a potential catchment population of more than 4.1 million people, with a singular focus of advancing cancer diagnosis, treatment, and prevention throughout the Gulf Coast and beyond, with science, technology, and hope. Want to know more about the Mitchell Cancer Institute? Visit us at usamci.com or search for us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Mitchell Cancer Institute is a member of USA Health. To learn more about all of our hospitals, clinics, and services, visit usahealthsystem.com.